I am really glad that I actually waited sort of the 24 hours after this trade, really, just to see all the blowback from it and some of the ideas that have come from this trade. So far, it looks a lot better sort of for the Wizards than it does for the Hawks. Obviously, the Hawks for the longest time, Trae Young was one of your best players in your entire association's history, and you basically got rid of him for salary filler. And to be able to, apparently, there's reports and all this sort of stuff going around, and there isn't really anything set in stone as of just yet. But the biggest talking point at the moment for the Atlanta Hawks is that apparently they are sort of going to go after Anthony Davis. And for me, as good of a player as Anthony Davis is, and I will never write off Anthony Davis ever, but I feel like Anthony Davis has just been put in trade talks over and over again over the last few years, and he was a part of the Luka Doncic trade. He has struggled basically to stay on the court again this year. And for the Atlanta Hawks as a whole, I think their problems with their team isn't in their big men. You already went out in the offseason and got Kristaps Porzingis, and provided Kristaps also hasn't been very healthy throughout this whole year, he's gone out with a couple of different injuries and hasn't really been able to stay on the court. But that's what you went out to get Kristaps Porzingis for. Because Kristaps Porzingis was brought onto your team to be that tall stretch big who was going to sort of do all the little things, space out the floor for Trae Young. Ever so turns out that that's not actually what Trae Young wanted. Now he's just struggling to find a place on the team throughout these injuries. And I think just bringing Anthony Davis in as another injury-prone big, it's not going to solve the problem. Getting rid of Trae Young, the writing was on the wall. It was going to happen at some point or another. But I think for the majority of it, I think keeping Trae Young and not just trading him for salary filler was something that you could have done at some point in the line. I'm completely over my head. I feel like I haven't even made an introduction for this video. I literally just got on the mic and started rambling. So basically yesterday, for anyone who has been living under a rock in the NBA world, Trae Young was traded yesterday. Trae Young has moved on from his time at the Atlanta Hawks. It was coming to an end at some point or another. They announced a few days ago that I spoke about on TikTok where they were coming to a means with Trae's preferred trade destinations, where he wanted to be, that the Hawks accepted that, and the Hawks were looking to find himself one of those places. It so turned out that was the Washington Wizards. He wanted to find himself on the Washington Wizards for one reason or another, and Trae Young is now a Washington Wizard. In return, the Atlanta Hawks got an expiring contract in CJ McCollum and just sort of a filler piece in Corey Kispert just to make the contract situation work. For the Atlanta Hawks, it is really weird because for the most part, I understand it. Like, the writing was on the wall. It had to happen at some point in time or another. But at the same time, how do you go out and get pretty much the same, a worse package than what Luka Doncic went for? Between and this is the thing that is blowing my mind with trades these days. Luka Doncic and Trae Young both got traded for a combined 1 draft pick. 1. And then you go and see guys like Rudy Gobert, Desmond Bane, Mikal Bridges. These guys are getting traded for like 5 draft picks, and they're all unprotected, and they're the best picks that you've ever seen. And no disrespect for them by any means of the imagination, but Luka Doncic is a one-in-a-generation talent, and Trae Young is one of the best offensive players in the league and led his team to a conference finals 5 years ago. I understand sort of the situation a little bit with Trae Young, where it was sort of at a point where his trade value was very quickly decreasing. Because You saw a situation where he missed a lot of time at the start of the season. Jalen Johnson was starting to emerge. He was playing really well. Any fantasy managers that picked up Jalen Johnson this season has absolutely lucked out. He is putting up some of the best numbers you could ever imagine for Jalen Johnson. But as soon as Trae Young... I'm pretty sure off the top of my head, I could be wrong. The Atlanta Hawks didn't win a game this year when Trae Young played. And when that happens, you quickly sort of think like it's not going to work in the long run. I sort of didn't know with Jalen Johnson playing as well as he was, how well he is actually going to mold with someone like Trae Young on the court as well. Because Trae Young, for the extent of his career, he is a very, very high usage offensive player. He is going to take the basketball and he is going to throw a lob. He's going to go for a short floater in the paint, or he's going to take a long jump shot. That has been the majority of Trae Young's career, and for the first few years, it worked really well. You had guys like DeAndre Hunter and Onyeka Okongwu and all of those sorts of guys that very quickly molded with Trae Young and made him look so good as an offensive player. But as time sort of went on and as the team sort of changed, where you've brought on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's taken the most shots per game that he has in his entire career, and a guy like Jalen Johnson, who is now very ball dominant. He's getting triple doubles every other sort of night. It really didn't look good for Trae Young. Not only did the offense shift dramatically, trying to share the touches between both Trae and Jalen, but also Trae Young on the defensive side of the ball is a lot to be desired. And it's no disrespect to Trae Young whatsoever, but when you're a 6'1" point guard who weighs probably about as much as I do, it really, you're not set up to be a good defensive player. It's basically just how it is, because there is no way on earth that somebody like Trae Young is going to stand in front of LeBron James and LeBron James isn't going to move him. That is just what it is. In terms of the Washington Wizards side of things, it's sort of a double-edged sword, because when I saw this trade originally, I did like it. Guys like Alex Sarr, guys like Trae Johnson, guys like Keyshawn George, these guys are all probably going to learn from Trae Young, develop from Trae Young. Alex Sarr is going to catch that many lobs from Trae Young that it is going to boost his numbers like we've already seen. We already know Alex Sarr is having a great sophomore season. He's at this point in time leading the league in blocks, and I made the video last week talking about the production of Alex Sarr and how good he has been. And now you add a guy that is just a raw playmaker and scorer in Trae Young. He is going to create so many windows of opportunity for Alex. So those two as a tandem are going to be really good together. But here's where the catch comes in, because I waited the time. Obviously, I had the initial reaction as a short yesterday about the trade and everything to go on with it. But I woke up this morning and one of the first things I seen on the timeline is that Trae Young is deliberately going to get held out by the Washington Wizards this entire year. Because not only do they want a higher draft pick, it is also because they have a top 8 protected draft pick for the New York Knicks. So for anyone that sort of doesn't know, if a top 8 protected pick means basically if the Washington Wizards in the lottery this year get picks number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, they get to keep the pick. So that actually stays with them, and Washington still get to use that pick as they usually would. But if it happens to go where, if Trae Young suited up for the rest of the year, him and Alex looked really good together, they played really good hoops together, and they ended up with like the 10th or the 11th overall pick, then that pick would now move over to the New York Knicks, and they would lose their pick entirely. The news report this morning came out and has said that Trae Young is going to manage injuries or something like that, sort of get him to a fully healthy body. And they are all going to shut him down for the 50 games of this regular season. I really don't know what to say about it, because there was literally a report about 3 weeks ago where the NBA is looking into ways to prevent tanking and ways to stop teams deliberately going for those lower order draft picks. And then something like this comes out, and it really sort of makes you wonder if the league's actually taking it seriously. Because to me, like, I'm all for players taking rest and all for players getting back from injuries as they ever so please. But deliberately sitting a player out for 50 games just to get a draft pick, not only are you sitting a player out, you're sitting out a former All-Star, an All-NBA guy, that you're sitting him out for 50 games just to get a draft pick. I think that is the most blatant tanking that I've ever seen from an organisation in a very long time. And not only that, but the Wizards looked really good with CJ McCollum running their point. He was, he's a plug-and-play sort of veteran. You don't know what you're going to get from CJ McCollum night to night. But offensively, CJ McCollum was playing really good basketball for them this year. And he played every game, started every game, and the one game that he sat out happened to be the trade. Because I think a lot of people yesterday knew that the trade news was coming. I just hoped it wasn't yesterday because I was spending some time away yesterday, enjoying my day and whatnot. But it happened to be that way. So I really don't know how to feel about it for the Wizards, because when Trae Young plays, he is going to be really good for the development of this team as a whole. He is only 27 years old. He's still got a lot of time left in his career. He's got 2 years left on his contract. There is things that Trae Young can do for this organisation, and if in 2 years' time, once his contract expires, he goes into unrestricted free agency, he wants to find a different team, hopefully by that time, Trae Young in the next year has developed all these guys, developed Alex Sarr to reach new heights, and developed Trey Johnson's jump shot, and all of these sorts of guys. That's sort of what the experiment is for the Washington Wizards. But now with this holding out rules and everything that they're doing, you're not only giving Trae Young $46 million to sit on the bench, but you are wasting valuable development time just in hopes of getting a higher order draft pick. And for me, I think the draft lottery has been one of the most inconsistent things in the entirety of the association recently. And to be able to still put your faith in the draft lottery that you are going to get a high draft pick just because you are holding out so many players, it doesn't make sense in my mind. So I don't know. There's so much to break down with this trade. I think the Atlanta Hawks sort of did the right thing. CJ McCollum, I think, is going to be decent for this team for the next 50 games of the season. He's going to move around. He's going to move without the ball. He's going to be able to play off Jalen Johnson. He's going to do everything on that offensive side of the ball that they probably want from him. Whereas with the Trae Young side of things, not seeing Trae Young play for the rest of this season just because of a tank, it seems really wrong. I know that the Cleveland Cavaliers have been fined like $300,000 already this season for holding players out illegally. How are you going to, for 50 games of this season, tell the NBA injuries report that Trae Young actually has something wrong with him? There is going to be a report, if this happens at the end of the season, it's going to get down to a point where it's like, oh, Trae Young slipped over in his kitchen and hurt his ankle, or like just something silly like that. And I think there's just so much to break down with it. On face value, I wish he plays. Like, I hope he plays for the Washington Wizards a fair bit, but we're not too sure just yet. Anyway, I think that's about it for today. It's a big rant about everything that I can see from this trade, the winners, the losers, all that sort of stuff. From face value, you can't really give a positive grade for the Atlanta Hawks. until we see what they do with that financial flexibility. Because that is the entire point of this trade, was to just free up some money. You've got an expiring contract, or you can put a large sum of money into another player for next year and bring them over. So we will see what happens with this team sort of over the next few months, going into the trade deadline and all that sort of stuff. But for right now, we're not too sure. For the Washington Wizards, if they hold Trae Young out, I'm not a fan of it. If they do end up playing him, I will actually really enjoy watching this team on the offensive side of the ball. So we will see what happens. Unfortunately, too, for that trade, Trae Young was about the only big name in the trade talks for this entire NBA trade deadline. And he was traded a month before the deadline hits. So I am really scared to see what the NBA trade deadline brings this season. I really don't think it'll bring a lot. I am on my knees that we trade Jonathan Kuminga from the Golden State Warriors, but only time will tell. We actually sort of won't know what will happen with that until the time comes, but I am just hoping Jonathan Kuminga is no longer on the Warriors when it comes to this trade deadline. Anyway, that's basically everything. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys have been loving the content recently, and I've been loving reacting and enjoying everything with you guys. Dropping the comments and all of that sort of stuff, just starting the conversation with me is always awesome. Nothing but positivity. That's all I love. That's what the page is for, and that's what I'm creating all of this for. I just want to create a positive NBA space. And that's all I'm sort of doing, just breaking down all the big stories and all of that sort of stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe would go a long way if you've enjoyed it. I'm not going to force your hand into doing anything you don't want to do, but if you could even consider it, that would be amazing. Thank you guys so much. I will talk to you guys in another few days. We'll continue to monitor the news over the next month with the trade deadline coming upon us. And yeah, we will continue to talk hoops. So the short content will continue to come out. I hope you guys are still loving that and enjoying that as much as I am. Without further ado, keep enjoying the hoops, guys, and I'll see you guys in another few days. Thank you, guys.